Somebody who chatted me was asking me about the difference between these two words. Not words, actually. The difference between the two concepts on the back. The when you talk about forms of literature and branches of literature. Okay, now what you would always hear is branches of literature. That is for those of us who are taking literature or who took literature. You hear about the branches of literature where you're told about the drama, the prose, and the poetry. You're talking about the branches of literature there. Okay, if you talk about forms of literature, yes, there is something known as forms. Literature has two forms. You are either talking about the oral literature or you are talking about the written literature. Literature has the oral form of it and it has the written form of it. Now, if you talk about oral literature, of course, when you talk about something oral, if you say that something is oral, using that adjective oral, it means that that thing is something that has to do with the words of the mouth. Now, the oral form of literature is that form of literature that is transmitted through the words of the mouth. It is not written. Now, I don't know where you are watching from, but I believe that every tribe has their oral literature. That is to say, during those times when there was nothing like graphic representation, when there was nothing like written words, we had stories, we had our ways of life, we had our cultures, we had our traditions. Am I right? Now, there are stories from your tribe. There are stories that do not have authors. There are stories that you cannot tell about how they originated. Maybe a story about how an ancient king ruled and some of the effects of that period. There are stories you were told as you were growing. Now, this is what you point to when you are talking about the forms of literature, the oral and the written. When you are talking about those ones that are passed down from one generation to another through the words of the mouth, they are orally transmitted. The form of literature that is not written, that is the oral literature. Despite the fact that some of those literary works that we refer to as oral, many of them are now written. It is still oral literature. They have been presented into the written form rather, but they are still oral literature. Being oral literature simply means that those words came as a result of transmission by the words of the mouth. That is oral literature. If you talk about the written literature, this is the literature of our time. This is the one that is written, the one that you have contained in written forms. Okay, now these branches of literature. Remember, we have the prose, we have the poetry, we have the drama, and we said here for the forms of literature, we said we have the oral and the written. And we know very well that these ones we have here, we know them as being related to the written literature. But yet, we also have these three inside this oral literature. If you ask around in your tribe, there has to be some stories. There has to be some folk tales, some myths, some legends that you have that originated from your tribe, right? They are under this prose. Remember when you define prose, you say that the prose is written or spoken. I don't know if you have come across that definition. Is a speech or a written work that flows without rhythmical or metrical patterns. That is prose. So when you tell those folk tales, even though they are oral literature, but that is the prose aspect of that oral literature. If you talk about the poetry, I don't know if you have heard songs that maybe old songs, old poems that originated from your tribe. I am an Igbo from Nigeria. We have ours. When we were told folk stories, there are points where we get to and we recite songs, we recite poems. I don't know if there is an Igbo there, but you hear something like, let's meet for instance, that time you hear something like, "Oh, one more can carry in." There is a story where that song comes from. Now, this is the poetry aspect of that oral literature. Now, there is something that it portrays, but it does that through the words of the mouth. That is poetry. If you come to the drama, it also has the oral literature also has its version of the oral of the drama. Now, there are some drama works, maybe. There are some drama works in your tribe that you observe. They are not written. They are acted. Sometimes they come with masquerades. Sometimes they come with different dances. In my tribe, you have something like Atirogo and so many other dances. These dances are part of oral literature, and yet under that oral literature, they are on the aspect of the drama. This is what we mean when you talk about forms of literature and the branches of literature. We're going to be stopping here. Thank you so much.